7 mind games narcissists play to control you, and how to spot them. Let's begin with a premise most people find uncomfortable. And not everyone you meet is like you. And I'm not talking about personality quirks, or trauma, or life experience. I'm talking about something far more fundamental: how people perceive the world, their wiring, their emotional circuitry, their very sense of morality and identity. Most people walk into relationships, romantic, familial, professional, with an assumption of shared humanity. That empathy is reciprocal. That apologies mean growth. That communication implies understanding. That love means safety. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, those assumptions don't just break, they shatter. You can't use emotional logic to interpret someone who runs on predation rather than connection. It's like using a compass in a hall of mirrors. You'll spin, collapse, and eventually convince yourself you're lost. And that's how they win. Not with strength, with confusion, with mimicry. They imitate decency to earn your trust, then weaponize that trust to devour your identity. Not all at once. Slowly. They like a parasite that learns your habits, your heart, and then rewrites the rules while you're still catching your breath. And the worst part, you won't even know it's happening until the walls are closing in, until your reflection no longer looks like your own. So we're not going to tiptoe around it. We're going to name it, call it what it is, expose the pattern, not to hate, but to survive. Let's start with what most people miss. Firstly, alien logic masquerading as human. You can't reason with something that mimics reason but doesn't possess it. The narcissists function like they belong here. Biologically, sure, but psychologically, spiritually, it's almost otherworldly. As if they were dropped into the human condition with a manual that skipped the chapters on remorse and reflection. And that's what traps people. You assume shared humanity. You assume they feel like you do, and they don't. Not in the same way, not with the same stakes. Where you see love, they see leverage. Where you feel guilt, they feel opportunity. Where you offer grace, they exploit the opening. It's not malevolence in the cartoon villain sense. It's emptiness. Void of true self that desperately cobbles together masks, personas, echoes of people they've devoured in the past. They imitate vulnerability, but it's rehearsed. They cry, but only when someone is watching. They confess, but only as a tactic. And if you assume they think like you, you're not just vulnerable, you're prey. Carl Jung warned, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The narcissist can't do that, so instead they control, they perform, they deflect, and you walk in expecting a dialogue, and instead enter a monologue with a mirror. The first defense is brutal clarity, not cynicism, not hate, clarity. You're not interacting with an emotionally whole person, you're engaging with a role, performance designed for extraction, and once you see that clearly, the rules of engagement change forever. Second, the black hole of communication, strategic silence as psychological warfare. Silence can be a tool of peace, or a weapon of domination, and narcissists, they wield it like a blade. When you reach out, desperate, confused, trying to repair or simply understand, you expect a response, because that's what healthy people do. They acknowledge, they clarify, they engage. But narcissists don't respond like that. They don't see communication as a means to mutual understanding. They see it as a stage, and when they withhold their performance, you suffer. That's the game. You send the text, no answer. You follow up, still nothing. Meanwhile, they're watching you spin, checking your phone, refreshing your inbox. At second, guessing your tone, questioning your worth. That's silence. It's prod absence. It's a silent domination of your nervous system. They end when you finally chase, when you lower yourself just to re-establish contact. They feel powerful again. This is not accidental. This is deliberate. This is psychological leverage through non-response. And it's why silence, when used by a narcissist, is not neutrality, it's cruelty in disguise. So if you're met with silence, don't scream into it. Don't dance for their attention. Recognize it for what it is, an invitation to lose yourself. And decline. Third, boundaries are optional. To them, to a narcissist, no doesn't mean no. It means, try harder. And that, right there, is the root of the problem. See, when you say no, you mean it. It's a moral boundary, a definition of self, an assertion of value. But to them, it's a challenge. It's not a wall. It's a door left ajar. Because their worldview isn't built on respect. It's built on acquisition. And if something is desired, like they, boundaries become mere obstacles, delays, puzzles, weak points to exploit. And when you finally give in, after the third or fifth or 10th time, they call that love, or worse, they call it persistence. But it's not, it's coercion, psychological erosion dressed up like passion. And the tragedy, the more empathetic you are, the more likely you are to bend. Because your compassion becomes your Achilles heel. You second guess yourself. You want to be fair. You don't want to be cruel. But firmness isn't cruelty, it's clarity, and clarity is what they fear the most. So the moment you say no, and then reinforce it, without apology, without stammering, you disrupt their framework. You declare that your soul is not for negotiation. That your time, your energy, your body, your mind are not bargaining chips, and that declaration, that's what makes you untouchable. Fourth, laws are for mortals. Narcissistic contempt for external authority. You'd think the law would be enough. A custody agreement. A restraining order. A signed contract. You'd think these would mean something to someone, even someone manipulative. But a narcissist doesn't see law as structure. They see it as suggestion. They don't believe in authority that originates outside of themselves. They're sovereign in their own minds. Self-appointed monarchs. The court order says stay away. They hear, find a loophole. The parenting schedule says Tuesday at 9. They show up at 11. And when you protest, they smile, not out of joy but contempt. Because to them, the law is a fence that applies to everyone else. Not to the special. Not to the exceptional. Not to them. It's a frightening realization. Because if someone doesn't respect external boundaries, then the only law that matters is their will. That's where danger begins. That's where chaos blooms. And it's why you need more than documentation. You need enforcement. You need vigilance. And you need to drop the naive idea that the narcissist will come around once it's all official. They won't. Not unless they're forced to. So make it specific. Make it airtight. Leave no cracks. Because if there's daylight, they'll exploit it. And when you call them out, they'll act offended. Because how dare you expect them to follow rules made for lesser beings? Fifth, gaslight Olympics, sabotage in small, petty doses. It's not always the grand betrayal that unravels a person. It's the slow erosion of certainty. A misplaced key. A vanished wallet. An object you know you left on the counter, now mysteriously gone. And the narcissist, they look at you with that tilted head and empty smile and say, you must have misplaced it. You double check, then triple. And when it suddenly reappears, exactly where it wasn't, the seed is already planted. You question your memory, then your perception, then your sanity. This is not accidental. This is architectural. It's constructed chaos. You deployed in increments small enough to escape alarm, but frequent enough to destabilize your grip on reality. This isn't confusion. It's strategy. Death by 1,000 manipulations. They don't need to scream to break you. They just need you to doubt your own eyes. Because once that loop begins, or once your inner compass stops pointing north, they can feed you any direction they want, and you'll follow. The philosopher Hannah Arendt once said, the sad truth is that most evil is done by people who never make up their minds to be good or evil. But the narcissist does choose, over and over. Small, assigned malicious decisions, designed not to destroy you outright, but to make you uncertain enough to destroy yourself. That is gaslighting in its purest form. Subtle, circumlogical warping. Sixth, recycled manipulation, discard hoover. Repeat, they leave, dramatically, cruelly, with the air of finality. And you think, it's over. But narcissistic abuse isn't linear. It's circular. They discard you not to exit, but to reset the game. And when they return, because they always return, it's not remorse. It's reconnaissance. They're checking if the locks have changed. If the gate is still open, if your spine still remembers how to bend, they come back softer, sweeter, mass-polished, words rehearsed. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And your soul, still hungry for closure, wants to believe. But what returns is not love. It's bait. The pattern is the point to idealize, devalue, discard. Then hover like a phantom until you're vulnerable again. It's not because they miss you. It's because they miss the control, the access, the emotional leverage. And once you open the door, they collect their supply. They inject just enough affection to dull your instincts and vanish again, leaving you re-traumatized, reeked, and re-confused. So the cycle becomes your reality. There, and every re-entry feels like fate, when it's really just a pattern dressed as providence. Recognition is your liberation. Predictability is their weakness. The moment you map the cycle, you begin to interrupt it. The narcissist thrives in repetition. You win by breaking the loop. Seventh, they weaponized empathy, using your humanity against you. Empathy is a divine faculty. It's the cornerstone of civilization. The reason we help the weak, forgive the flawed, and love the unlovable. But in the hands of a narcissist, empathy becomes a snare. They know your heart. That's what makes them so dangerous. They study your patterns, your language, your history. And when you're finally on the verge of walking, when you've gathered your courage, made the plan, then told your friends, they collapse. Suddenly they're weeping, sick, suicidal. I have no one else. You're all I have. Don't leave me like they did. And in that moment your soul splits in two. Because you are empathetic. You do care. You've spent your life helping others stand when they fall, so you pause, you reconsider. You stay. And just like that, you've re-entered the cage. And thrown away the key. The sacred has been turned against you. This isn't just manipulation. It's sacrilege. They've hijacked your best quality and used it to preserve your imprisonment. That's the highest form of betrayal. Hey not that they hurt you, but that they convinced you to help them do it. There's a line in the book of Proverbs. Guard your heart, for from it flow the springs of life. Yes, be compassionate, but be vigilant. Because some people don't want healing, they want access. And the price of your empathy should never be your destruction. You don't survive a narcissist by becoming smarter than them. You survive by becoming clearer than you've ever been. Clear about what's real. Clear about who you are. And clear about what you will never tolerate again. Because this isn't just about them. It's about you. About whether you'll keep negotiating with people who feast on your forgiveness. Or finally decide that your peace is not a sacrifice you owe to the unwell. And when you draw that line, sharp, non-negotiable, they panic. Not because you hurt them, but because they lost access. Access to your time, your mind, your energy, your soul. That's the war. Not loud, not obvious, but internal and sacred. You win the moment you stop asking, why are they like this? And start asking, why am I still here? That's the pivot. That's the power. And if this message hit you, if you felt something true rising in your chest, don't go back to silence. Speak, share, like, comment, subscribe. Watch the other videos on this channel. You are not alone in this. There is language for what you've lived through. There is meaning. There is escape. And if you're ready, there is freedom. We'll walk this road together. One truth at a time.